What's up, Josh?
Hey, good day to you, sir.
Good day. So there is a member of our team who's been flying under the radar a bit, and today we are going to introduce him to our audience and learn his story of collecting rare JDM cars.
Absolutely.
Yeah, looking forward to it. This is the Money Shift Podcast, Episode 8.
Welcome. Today's special guest, you may have seen him on the gridiron, and we know him as an avid car collector and JDM enthusiast. We'd like to introduce you to Connor McGovern. Welcome to the podcast, Connor.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Same here.
So for the viewing audience, kind of give everyone a little bit of a background on yourself.
Yeah, so been in the NFL for the last 9 seasons. Been with Denver, where I met Josh and got in this whole game my first 4 years, and then I was in with the Jets for 4.5, and in that year 9, I bounced between New York and the Saints. I was on 2 teams that had 4 head coaches in like 5 weeks. So it's kind of a crazy time this year, but it was a fun way. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. But yeah, and the way I got I've been into cars my whole life. My dad's a car guy, really probably more a motorcycle guy that I transitioned into cars. But you know, my dad, anything with a motor and some wheels, or tracks, being up in North Dakota, we were doing growing up. And so I fell in love with it early on. You know, Saturdays in the wintertime, it was like my dad's day with us, me and my little brother. We'd go to the shop. I'd be wrenching on some stuff with my dad. My brother, who's the racer, would be, you know, riding around on his scooter or bike, making race tracks and stuff. And I'd be trying to help my dad with whatever I could wrench in. And grew up racing dirt bikes and transitioned to 4 wheels. And I got into collecting cars as I started making a little more money, and I was searching for an R35 was my goal. I wanted a GTR so bad, and I was scrolling through the internet and found a 34 for sale. And then I got into the whole import gray market, you know, everything top to bottom into the JDM scene. And so I kind of threw myself into that in a way with a question mark, being gray market 34 being my first JDM purchase. But, you know, through that purchase, which I don't own anymore, and my second one was also gray market, and I actually ended up on that list, that FBI list from the Florida deal. But luckily, that's a race car. So when it's a little weird having a call from an FBI agent, but my phone rang. It said Federal Bureau of Investigations on the caller ID, and I was like, well, here it is. I've been dabbling in the gray market for probably at the time 5 years, and I was like, it caught up to me. But that car is a full race car, cage, gutted, definitely sequential, not street legal. So I told the guys, like, hey man, like, this thing's never going to touch the road. It's track only. He's like, cool. I was going to take your title anyway, so if you don't need it for the track, then you and I are good. I was like, I get my car. He's like, yeah, we're not touching the car. Just, you know, you're not going to be able to register it. I'm like, cool. I don't need to register it. So that conversation went better than I was expecting it to go. But yeah, so that's how I got into the JDM car scene, and Josh and I have been getting after it ever since, with a lot of cool cars, imported, bought, still in Japan, the whole deal, raced on track. It's been a journey that I've really enjoyed.
That's a really cool way to get into it. I mean, not many people can say that they first got into JDM cars with an R34.
Yeah, no, it was rare, and it was fun, and you know, I don't know what it was. The gray market added a little excitement to it. I think just, you know, It's always fun. Stuff's more fun when the line's a little blurry, you know.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
You didn't get it from MotorX, did you? Because I know that they got in hot water with the feds.
No, so I did at one point own a MotorX car. It was a 33 that I had built, and it was a beautiful car. One of the original like 13 or whatever it was, 33s that came over MotorX. So that car had a lot of really cool history. Ended up selling that, but no, mine was imported by, you know, the guy in Florida who ended up getting caught up. And the interesting way he got caught up was actually how he was registering them. And just like everybody else, taxes. If you don't pay the government, they're going to come after you. And he was skirting what those cars were worth, even though they were gray market. And yeah, IRS went after him, and once they realized the cars were a little questionable, they turned it over to the FBI. And just like every great criminal, the IRS will get you. So that's how that one went. So.
And that's actually how you and I met, is that car. It kind of shows you the power of networking. So Connor, playing for the Broncos, there was a dealership up the street, and, you know, purchasing a Ford truck. And I used to work at that dealership, and there's a gentleman there that we had a mutual acquaintance on. And, you know, it was like, hey, I got this car I'm trying to get hold of and sell. Do you know anybody? And I was the only guy he knew of. And then that led into other relationships too. So like that car was the start of a lot of things, actually.
Yeah. I mean, through that car, met Jordan Lowballer GTR down in Arizona, who's been a great friend. We're members of the same racetrack down in Arizona. And yeah, a bunch of other people through that. And it was really my intro into this world that I've enjoyed so much these last couple of years.
So other than the GTR being your first JDM car, do you remember what your first car was? Alex had a V-Dub. Mine was a Grand Am. We were talking about that in previous. What was your first actual, I own this car?
The first car, my first car was a two-door Jeep Wrangler, like basic cloth seats, you know, the most basic model you could possibly get. I wanted something sweet growing up. My dad's a car guy, so he flirted with the idea of like him and I building something cool or whatnot. And we grew up racing dirt bikes and anything else with the motors, snowmobiles, whatever it was. So in my dad's mind, he had trained me and my little brother our whole lives to go really, really fast. And now as we're going now, instead of, you know, my first ever thing was on a racetrack, right? So just full out 100%. And, you know, you don't do that on the road. So most people, you know, a lot of people who don't start young go from the road to the racetrack, and then, you know, they're not used to going 10/10ths. And so he was like, I'm getting you the slowest thing possible that can withstand the winter up here. And man, even with that Jeep, I would driving it way faster than I probably should have. I think I got my first speeding ticket within the first like 20 days of having my driver's license in a Jeep Wrangler, which I don't even know how I did it. But yeah, that was my first car, a two-door Jeep Wrangler. That was about the size of my first car. It was awesome though. And then so I was totally stock, right? And I'm going into my sophomore year playing football. And my dad's like, hey, if you get all state, and I was coming off my freshman year, I started varsity. He goes, if you get all conference, we'll put a lift kit on it, big tires, like do it pretty cool. I was like, sick. So I ended up getting all state. So that winter, I drove my mom's old car. And that winter, my dad and I would spend like every weekend at the shop. We put a full lift kit. It was like a 6 or 8 inch lift kit, big 38-inch tires. Like that thing was sick when we were done with it. And obviously my dad and I had spent a lot of time in the shop together and had more because at that point we weren't really dirt biking as much anymore and weren't going to the shop as much, and gave us a reason to go wrench on some stuff and have spent some quality time together. And yeah, it was awesome. So the first year I had it was pretty, you know, just basic, and then it was sick once we built it. So
that's awesome. So growing up where you grew up, I mean, you kind of grew up out, you know, in the sticks and the backcountry essentially, and a Jeep makes sense, and, you know, living track life. And so, you know, being around probably old square body trucks and Jeeps and, you know, things of that nature, what was the first thing that gave you kind of an interest more into the JDM style cars? What was the captivation that got you into JDM cars?
I was always into muscle cars. So my first like cool car was a 428 Cobra Jet Mustang, 69 Mustang. It was red. It was sick. And I was into the whole muscle car, tuner car, you know, classic Fast and the Furious, Need for Speed. My dad was into muscle cars, and then he bought a Porsche and got into track driving, and that's when we transitioned from 2 to 4 wheels. And he was like, "You need to get into Porsches." And I was just GTR was my, like, those 3 letters. It's all I needed in life was a GTR.
Yeah.
So, since I've kind of transitioned, I still have GTRs. I got the 35 behind me. I got 234s. So I got GTRs, but Porsches definitely started to steal my soul a little bit. So yeah, I'll always have a 35 and a 34, but it's why I sold the 32. I had the 32, 33, 34, and 35 all in white, looked sick, but I was like, I need to get some more Porsches and move to 32 and 33. So
Yeah. I don't blame you. I'm a hardcore Nissan guy, but close second to that for me is Porsches. So I feel you there.
Oddly enough, I feel like that's a pretty normal transition. You go from GTR, because you're into the all-wheel drive, and then a lot of what it feels like to me, a lot of GTR guys, that next evolution is a Porsche. So I'm not the only guy that I've seen take that path. So, or yourself.
Yeah, and I really didn't have any exposure to Porsche before you, and when we started off early on, and you had picked up that 996, and it was the end of the Metzger era, all-wheel drive turbo. I was used to driving an R32 Skyline around. That was a kick in the pants, and until you actually drive a Porsche, like, there's no way to understand it. And I agree, it is a very logical progression to watch that. And you have some pretty cool Porsches now in your collection.
My Porsche, it's getting. I don't know how many more I'll add, but it's at a good spot right now for sure.
Nice. So I guess that's a good segue. We want to learn a little bit more about your car collection and what you've got in your garage. Obviously, not just what's behind you, but what are the cars that you've collected?
Yeah, so most of them are in my garage right now, and I can do a little spin around and show the garage off. So right behind me is it's mirrored, so that's gonna throw me off. But so I'll move over here, and let me try to figure this out. There we go. So the Porsche right there, that is a 964 complete resto mod from Kelly Moss. My dad commissioned that build. It's a 93, which was the year I was born. And he commissioned one for myself and then one for my little brother, a 95, the year he was born. And they're both similar. Mine's a C4. My brother's is a C2. And but they're 3.8 liters. So, stroker and new heads on the motor. So they make about 320, 330 on pump gas, which in a lightweight old
it doesn't
Porsche
weigh anything.
Yeah, it doesn't weigh anything. It's awesome. It's so much fun, and they wrecked me for over there. I rotate the camera to my muscle cars. It's just, if I want to drive a manual transmission, a more raw feel, I'm taking the Porsche and not my Judge. And it hurts me because my Judge was like the ultimate muscle car for me. That and a Camaro, and I just, I'm just not going to drive it anymore. And I'm not at the point in my life where I just want stuff, I don't want a lot of garage queens. So I'm going to have to move on from a couple cars. But Matt and I live in North Dakota now, which it's not enough summer months to drive. But then I have, again, it's mirrored. So I'm going to go over this way. I have the GT3 RS fully done by, I appreciate it. It's got a Dundon stage 3 like motor stuff. So it's headers, exhaust, tune, intake. I feel like I'm missing something else in there. And then it has the Dundon gooseneck wing, so it looks a lot more similar to a 992 wing wise. And then it has, you can kind of see it. And then after Dundon was done with it, I sent it to eMotion. So you can see the hood on it, and it has a scoop, and then it has the mirrors in it. So the radiator went from a rear radiator, the double mounted rear radiator to a front mounted radiator. And it has the mirrors. So it's similar. It's, and instead of a GT3 RS, street version of kind of like the Cup car or whatever. It's more like the GT3R now, the endurance, the top dog 911. It's similar to that with the hood setup, some of the suspension that Emotion did to it, and all that kind of stuff. So it's got coilovers, new arms, and new sway bars, all that kind of good stuff, all the chassis stuff. And then got the 35 behind that, the Nismo. It's got an Alpha 7 package on it, so it's making about 680 on E85 to the wheels. It's got endless brakes, which the brake kit on it is just ridiculous. Like it's, my R34 race car has endless brakes, and in my opinion, they're way better than the Porsche carbon ceramic. So I had to put them on the 35. So then I'll rotate this. So you got the truck. There's my little tractor. Probably gets the most driven right now because it's wintertime up here. Got the S14. Yeah, I got the drift car. So that was built by M-Spec, and so it's got a full angle kit. It's gutted, SR20 in it. Makes like 350 to the wheels. Perfect to learning how to drift. Mm-hmm. Then you're sneaking in the Camaro. So that just got done. That is a built LS3, a stage 2 6L80. So it in the way it's been modulated, it's paddle shifted, clutchless paddle shift. So kind of, it's built. So it's a little bit of a kick in the pants, right? The torque converter is pretty tight on it. But it's sweet. It feels like it's pretty awesome. Then you go to the Judge, what we were just talking about. So it's like I said, that's my ultimate muscle car. It's a resto mod because it's just what I like to do to stuff. So it's got a LSA heads and cams. It makes like 680 to the rear wheels, which not great for stoplights. Leaving stoplights does massive burnouts, which is fun. But I'll never forget. This is a quick story. I was driving it to work when I played for the Broncos, and I'm at a stoplight. It's early, 6 in the morning, and this guy next to me is in, just like an Econo box. Probably in his late 40s, looking at my car like, man, I wish I would have made some choices to have one of those. And he's looking at it, and I was like, I'm gonna light the rear tires up pretty good. So I just do an absolute monster rolling burnout, first, second, third. My left foot's on the brake, so I'm keeping pace with him, but I'm doing a burnout, and I'm just, like I said, first, second, third. Foot on the brake, just absolutely smoking out the person behind me to the next stoplight. And I look over, and the guy's smile is just huge. And I was like, "Yep, that guy's a car guy." And I hopefully I made his day. And I thought it was a fun way to go to work that morning. And then 60 to 130, this thing was, talking about gray stuff. Denver, the interstate seems to be everyone's favorite place to go and do some drag racing. And so I love just slow rolling in one of the lanes, doing about, 50, 55, waiting for someone to pull up on me. And they'd never expect that this thing had what it had in it, and do some fun highway pulls to about the speed limit, or a little above. And it was, it always blew people's mind because it's a big, heavy, old school muscle car, but it's got it has 685 to the rear wheels. It's moving once it's rolling. Yeah. Then I got the Century behind that, keeping up with the JDM Flare. That was my daily this last year. Josh helped modify that, made it sound a little bit better than, not literally nothing. So it get the V12 sing a little bit. Then I got my girl, Old Smoky. That's what I call her. That's got a 7.3 in it. So it just absolutely rolls coal. The Muscle actually built that one. And then you got my wife's Bronco behind that. That's got a supercharged LS in it. Way too much horsepower for what it is. It's got 4-link suspension. Yeah. I mean, it's got enough horsepower where I don't know how, because, I drive it pretty nice. My wife doesn't really beat on it. But it lost third gear. So my next project, you saw the lift back by the tractor. is to put a new transmission in it. From the Camaro build, I have an extra 4L80 in it, or in my garage. So I'm just going to do a quick little. Oh, and then there's the my 944. Let me get out of the way. It's my new Lemons car.
Oh, nice.
We've enjoyed doing the 24-hour Lemons. We did it in Crown Vics because we thought everybody played by the rules, and they definitely do not. And we were very much outgunned with the Crown Vics we were running versus all the other like old BMWs and everything else. So, yeah, that's the collection right now. You're missing my 234s. I have another gated 360 down in Arizona, and my RWB. And the RWB will be here mid-February. The NER should be in Canada in the next month or two, and then the race car should be done in a month or two as well. So I'm getting close to, for the first time in a long time, having every single one of my cars in relatively one spot and ready to go. So
yeah, that's huge.
Man.
Your cars have been everywhere, spread out along a lot of states for the longest time.
Bunch of states, different shops. It's been a journey, but we're here. So it's nice to finally be here. Let me try to make the background a little cooler.
That's good. Yeah, it looks like it got zoomed in aggressive. Or something.
I don't know how I did that actually. I was way zoomed in. I'll just scoot my little table back, and then we'll make it work.
All good.
There we go.
Yeah, that is a hell of a collection. I can say that I've owned two of those cars that you have. I used to have a Porsche 944, although mine was a 951, so the turbo.
Yeah, those are sweet. If I wasn't going race car, I owned a red one, a turboed red one, and then I was like, man, this would be a great Lemons car. And I traded a guy heads up actually he gave me a little cash on top for this full race car, because it used to run NASA, so the cage is right for Lemons and everything else. So
nice. Yeah, those are great cars.
Great cars.
They're
fantastic.
I think they're just now starting to become sort of popular again, and starting to see the prices rise. Yeah, my 951 made like 350 to the wheels, so that was a fun. Fun car.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, and then I've owned 3 S14s. I'm currently building a Koki S14, which is on the other side of that wall. So I am rather envious of your collection, but at least I feel like I can somewhat hang.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and in my, like, the cars, they come and go collections, and it's just, as long as you have one car that, gets you excited to go open your door to your garage, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
and I know there's people that don't have that opportunity, and that's what every car guy's striving for is to start with one and see where it takes you.
Yeah. So of your collection, what are your top 3?
My top 3, it kind of changes. I mean, the 9 right now, like that, the 964, it's literally perfect. If you went through every nut and bolt was touched, it has the 5-speed, it has the 3.8. You open the door, it smells brand new. Like, it is such an awesome car. I haven't spent enough time. I think it'll go 964, RWB, and then my NER, followed closely by the GT3 RS. And then mine's more a top 5, and then the R35. Those are kind of the 5 that I'll never part ways with at this point, is my goal. And then I need to, like I said, the judge, I think, unfortunately has to move on, and the Sentry has to move on. Old Smoky might be moving. I can't, I just need some 4-wheel drive fun, something that, other than my F450 to take around in the wintertime. It's silly to have 4 or 5 months of driving weather for a summer car, and to have 10 cars that I need to drive in those 4 months. What a first world problem, but it just seems silly to to give yourself that problem. Might as well. That's a problem I can fix, and might as well fix it. So.
And it's kind of cool too how your family has the tradition of each one picking their favorite car from the year they were born. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it kind of turned into a Porsche deal, and like I said, our families. The more we've gone to the track, the more we fall in love with Porsches. And my brother had got his done first, and it was I couldn't wait for mine. And Kelly Moss, I don't know if for the average car enthusiast, you don't hear about Kelly Moss as much as you hear as BBI and obviously Singer Gunther Works. Some of those, just the Kelly Moss. If you're into cup car racing, I think they take almost every spot on the podium every cup race. But when it comes to their restorations, they're huge in the Safari and this kind of resto mod, nut and bolt rotisserie restoration, and they do a fantastic job.
That's awesome. And then the GT3, that's your current track car, right? That's the one you go get gorilla with?
Yeah. If I want to hit the track, that's what I take. The 35 and the GT3 RS, that thing, me being that I'm, I'm not a slow driver, but I'm not the fastest. And
it's scary riding with you, bro.
Oh, that Porsche is terrifying. Like it definitely wants to try to, where the R35, I feel comfortable sliding it and really pushing that thing maybe a little harder than the Porsche. And, but I'm getting there with the Porsche. But yeah, just, the Porsche is such a, it's an absolute scalpel when it comes to the track. And it's plus it has 550 horsepower, which is, when you're driving really fast on the track, that's, stoplight to stoplight, that doesn't get anybody excited these days. But you go on a racetrack, that's a lot of horsepower.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I've been in a few of your cars at Nismo. It's a different experience. And I had a privilege to drive that Nismo one day. And even on low boost, the thing that's crazy about that car is everything's so tight about it.
Yep.
You can end up going, 140 and feels like you're going 60. You don't know. You have to really watch out.
It's definitely built to go well over 100 miles an hour and sit there and like it. So, if you're not paying attention and you're just cruising, it'll get up there pretty quick on you.
And so being as actively engaged in the car community you are and acquiring these cars, you've kind of had a fun history with some auction stuff. I mean, the amount of times I've heard I've accidentally won this car out of your mouth is pretty awesome. I think that's how my first experience was, that 996. What's your favorite auction story?
Yeah, that's I think so. The first car, like the cool car, the 69 Mustang I was talking about, my dad, it was Bear Jackson, and my dad was there with some buddies, and I had just gotten done with my rookie year. So I had a little bit of cash in the bank account, one where I felt like I could, like I said, I've been dying since I was a little kid to have a muscle car. And so Bear Jackson was coming up. My dad was down in Arizona with some buddies. They'd been drinking, and there was this Chevelle that had a Duramax swap in it, and I thought it was so sick. Yeah, it was crazy. Just an absolute Frankenstein. And like I said, I'm into resto mods. It was resto modded. I had a feeling it wasn't going to go for like crazy money, because I mean it's a diesel swap in a Chevelle, right? Like, and I'm watching it on TV. I can see my dad on stage bidding on the Chevelle. And I'm like, go higher, go higher. He's like, oh, I think you should stop. And I was like, no, bid one more time. And he'd had a couple of drinks, so we're like kind of arguing on the phone, or not arguing, but I was like, hey, you should bid. He's like, I don't know, like it might not be the best. I'm like, Dad, this thing's sweet, like it'd be sick. And boom, hammer goes. Because at Barrett, like if you're not, they have so many cars to move. If you're not like paying attention, locked in, and you hesitate, boom, auction's over. And I was like, oh, I was kind of crushed. Like it was kind of within my budget, and I was like, it was cool and different. And I was a little bummed, but my dad's on stage still. And it was red, and then the next car up, or maybe the car after, was a 428 Cobra Jet Mustang. My dad hadn't looked at it prior to the auction, nothing. He's like, "Oh, it looks really clean. Like it should be good." And rolls across the stage. I win it. It gets delivered in Denver. The thing doesn't start. Like the transmission wouldn't even work. Like, oh, me and my cousin and my best friend, we're going to like take it to the gym. Like we had this whole day planner on my new car. And it was kind of a hunk of shit. It like, they pulled the classic Barrett where they like got it just good enough to roll across the stage. And like it had the numbers matching 428, which saved me in the end. But like it had like some really bad 3-speed transmission out of like whatever the Econobox car was in 1970. It had like a bunch of stuff wrong with it. The interior wasn't right. But so actually my first build was restoring that, which I ended up having fun doing, but and kind of flirted with the resto mod because I ended up putting a Tremec in it. And oddly enough, I never thought my like, name being an NFL player meant anything in the car. So like whenever I list a car for sale, I don't say like NFL football player. But the guy that bought my Mustang from me I'm scrolling Bring a Trailer and I see my name. I was like, what's going on? And it was this car, and the guy that bought it from me, and he ended up selling it for like 10 or 15 grand more than I sold it to him for. So
Wow.
I guess putting my name on it did help a little bit. So anyways, that was my first auction story, my first muscle car or like enthusiast car. So it was kind of a cool little deal and came full circle, and the guy that bought it from me just sold it on Bring a Trailer a couple weeks ago, so used my name, and that's how I saw it. So
that's the red one. Yeah.
Yep, that was the red one. Yeah. Ended up being a super nice car when I was done with it. But we got a little, you hear those stories about Barrett Jackson sometimes, and we got hoodwinked a little bit on that one. So, but
speaking of Barrett Jackson and kind of the intertwine into the driven vehicles platform, there's another interesting vehicle that you purchased, the 360 Modena. What was that story like? Modena.
Yeah. So again, that was a little bit of an accident buy. I was in Arizona, but I didn't go to Barrett Jackson that day. I think it was a Friday afternoon car. I had sold my Mustang, so I'd been there the night before. I'd sold that RTR Spec 5 that I had owned for a minute, and sold it there. So I was there then, and didn't go on Friday, but I'm like, playing out in the yard in Arizona with my kids, and I have an earbud in, just listening to the auction. And it said, formerly owned by Paul Walker, 360, Modena, 6-speed gated. And I had I ended up buying it back, my white 360 gated. And it's like, other than the 964, it's like the best street car. Like it's so fun to drive. The gated 6-speed is so perfect. And I loved my white one so much so I ended up buying it back. But this one came up, and I got my start into the car or the tuner game with being a huge Paul Walker fan, and I was like, man, I need another 360 that's gated. And so this one, I'm listening. I didn't even know the car was coming up. I just happened to be listening, and I'm like, oh, that's badass. Like I'll check this out. So I tried as much as I can to try not to in front of my kids. I grabbed my phone out real quick out of my pocket, and I start bidding. I bid to whatever it was, and it sounded like it. There's 3 or 4 more bids that came after I had placed mine. And so I'm like, oh, I lost it. And so I put my phone back in my pocket. The auctioneer like slams the hammer, like probably, like I said, 3 bids higher than what I paid for it or thought I had bid to. And so I don't think anything of it. I'm like, missed it, and go back to playing with my kids. And about 45 minutes later, we go inside, and I grabbed my phone, go check my emails, and said, congratulations, you've won. I'm like, what did I win? And I was like, for a second, I thought my kid, my daughter had grabbed my phone and like clicked something. I'm like, whoa, what did I win? And I look and I was like, I won the 360. I was like, I thought I got outbid. Turns out I did end up winning the 360, and it's a fantastic car. And the guy I had bought, I had been at my first time actually being in Barrett Jackson in person was when Paul, a large chunk of Paul Walker's cars went through the auction block, and I think that was 2019 or 2020, something like that. But I got to see firsthand Paul Walker's collection, and I noticed that Paul Walker really liked to drive his cars really hard, and every single one of them was a driver's car. Like you could tell Paul drove them and put them away right after driving them, and that's just how he did. And mad respect for it, because he was a collector, but he was a driver first. And so I get the Ferrari, I send it down to get it all checked out, and the guy's story kind of matched up that had owned it in between myself and Paul. He bought the car from Paul Walker, and I think it was 2 or 3 months later is when then Paul had passed. So the guy, kind of, I don't know if he felt bad. He kind of had said like, I wasn't sure, and he kind of figured the value would go up. He ended up like parking the car in his mom's garage up in the Northeast, and he lives in Arizona, but his mom had a garage spot. He bought it from Paul, put it in that garage, never touched it until he sold it at Barrett Jackson. And you could tell it had been. So we went through all the lines and a lot of the bushings and got it running really, really nice and back to the way a streetable car should be. But yeah, man, Paul liked his cars, and he liked to drive them, and he drove them hard. So it's fun to have that piece of history with Driven now, and yeah, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, it's an awesome story, and we hope to, through Driven, to continue the story of that car and make it something that a lot of people can enjoy and share in for a very long time to come.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for those who are listening, you may be familiar if you know Driven Labo. The car that he's been speaking about is going to be the first car that we are tokenizing for the Driven Vehicles RWA platform. So anybody who's either just a fan of cars or a big fan of Paul Walker, like we all are, can own a piece of that history by joining the platform and purchasing shares of the vehicle. And we've got some really fun things planned for that vehicle as well. So, for example, some of the things that are going to be coming down the pike for it are the community of shareholders will be able to propose and vote on some of the things that we do to the car. We plan on giving a little bit of a JDM treatment to fit with the brand and Paul Walker's legacy as a JDM enthusiast. All things that are going to be, I call it non-destructive editing, things that we can do that can be undone without affecting the value of the car. And then, we'll be also taking it to a variety of car shows to, promote the project, promote the brand, and get it out there. So the hope is that we'll actually have that car featured at the Slush Motorsports Festival at Pikes Peak in May?
Mm-hmm. May 20th. It's Memorial Day weekend.
I guess 24th. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's the first car we're going to be bringing to our community, and excited for it.
Yeah, it'll be awesome. It's, like I said, it's a cool car, and I've gotten the opportunity to drive a lot of cars, and a gated Ferrari, the sound, the feel, and it's not even just the sound of the V8, the flat plane. It's like the sound of the clicking of the gears. It's such an awesome car, and they're so much fun to drive, and they're so fun to look at. I still think they look fantastic, and Yeah, I think they're awesome cars.
Mhm.
Granted, I had like a poster of one growing up because of when I was born, but so I might be a little biased, but yeah, they are my favorite.
Yeah, and from what I hear, the that gated 6-speed is relatively rare. I think something like only 400 and something were made with that.
Yeah, they're really rare because that F1 gearbox, like, you know, it's called an automated manual,
Mhm.
was like big F1 technology. It's kind of what, if I remember correctly, what made Ferrari, like obviously Schumacher, but what
Mhm.
helped Schumacher and that Ferrari was that, because some of the teams were still messing around with like manuals and you know, where the driver has a clutch and or some of the time has and this one was fully no clutch, and so it's true F1 technology, but man, they can be rough. And so, but back in 2000, or you know, this one was in 99 or whatever, 99 2000. It's like it was such new technology that everybody bought them with the F1 gearbox, the paddle. I mean, it's kind of what I did to the Camaro and the paddle shift manual gearbox, and yeah, they're just, you know, it's old technology, and that gated 6-speed is, one, it's rare, and two, it's hard to beat in a street
Yeah.
car.
Yeah, from what I hear,
Hard
that's
to beat in a street car.
the desirable one, is the gated
Yep,
6-speed. It's one everybody
it
wants.
is by far. And
Mhm.
most people, if they did buy this, the 6-speed was cheaper, right? And so a lot of the 6-speeds are in base model, like no optioned 360s, and Paul had done some stuff like it's all Alcantara interior. He has
Mhm.
like more of a challenge style seat in it, and so Paul definitely did a lot of touches to it on the interior. But yeah, so it's a so it I don't he you know, he's an enthusiast, so he wanted the 6-speed gearbox, and yeah, it's a sweet car.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Well,
kind of a
good.
natural segue into what we're doing with Driven is, you know, obviously the main token is called Buster Token. And, you know, a lot of times Alex and I are geeking out about internet Web3 shit and also car enthusiasts. So we kind of get lost in our own weeds sometimes. And, you know, that's why we appreciate having, you know, like you on board, who is familiar with the technology and holds a little bit of crypto, but maybe not so much in the fine details like Alex and I. And so we were just curious to get your insights on, you know, where you see this industry going and what makes you excited about being part of the Driven culture.
Yeah, my crypto experience is everything that you've told me, Josh, and you know, it's high level at best, about the highest of high levels. To be a believer, right? You know, I'm not so high level that I think it's not real money, right? Like there's that, and then I understand it and I believe in it, and I think it's, but like to really dive deep into it, you're going to lose me pretty quick in those conversations. But yeah, dude, I think it's fascinating. I do think it's the future. Without getting political and stuff, it just seems like that is the natural progression on how you know, evolution has gone. It's just where we're headed as the society, and it's where, you know, I think that investing and how funds are transferred and how stuff is invested in, it just, that's where it definitely makes sense to me. And you know, I think whether you want to blame inflation or car people, the prices of cars are just, collector cars are going up and up and up, and to be able to say you own, you know, one of those cars is going to get harder and harder. And so to say you own a piece and get to partake in a community around a vehicle, a special vehicle, I think is definitely going to be a big deal. You know, people, you know, if you buy, like, you look at the Green Bay Packers, and every year they're the only public shareholder NFL team, right? And you ask any Packers fan, if they're a true fan, they own a share of the Green Bay Packers, and it's a huge deal, and they take great pride in it, and that's their team, and they get to own a little piece of it. And it's similar with these cars, like you truly own a piece of this car that's been part of history, that has an incredible backstory, and I think it's definitely and like I said, they keep going up, so you're investing in an asset that is increasing, and there's not going to be any fresh cars off the lot that are going to depreciate 20% right when you drive it off with this platform, and it's only cars that are going to keep getting more rare and keep increasing in value.
Yeah, I mean, cars as an asset class, you could say that they're a deflating asset, or I should not say a deflating, what's the word I'm looking for here?
Depreciating asset?
Not depreciating, where the, I guess it would be, oh my gosh, the term is escaping me, but basically what I'm trying to say is like, there will never be more R34 GTRs.
Oh, yeah.
There will only ever be less. And, over time, as, people drive them into the ground or maintain them poorly or crash them or race them, there's only going to be less of them. And deflating. No, is that right? Deflating asset? Oh my God. Why can't the term?
It's not a depreciation. I know it's it's a decrease. It's because you don't want to say decreasing because it's an increasing asset, but it's the amount is decreasing. Anyways, I know I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah, I think most people know what we're talking about. So
the rarity is going to increase every time somebody piles one up. So.
Yeah, and I mean the way we see it is when one enters our collection, it's going to be very well taken care of. We know that as a group, we're all going to conserve that thing for the long term, so that can remain one of the top specimens out there for a very long time. And maybe a few years down the road, whether it's 5-10 years or whatever it happens to be, some of these cars might demand a really high price, and the community of shareholders of that car could choose to take it to Barrett-Jackson and cash in their investment. So yeah, I mean, there's so much that we can do with it, and it's great that even somebody who has, I'd say, a cursory knowledge of crypto, such as yourself, really sees the vision.
For sure. I mean, it wasn't my whole life. I had this car collection, and I knew the barriers to entry, and I think this is a fantastic way to combat those barriers of entry into to a thing that people are so passionate about and have so much pride and so much want to. And I think it's a great gateway into my drug of choice and my addiction, and one that like you said, you can make money off of, and not if you do it right, not a bad place to park money and let it grow over time.
Yeah. So given your understanding of the crypto world and your connection with the car community, I'd be curious what your thoughts are on maybe some of the biggest hurdles that we'll run into, trying to bring the average car enthusiast into this space, get them to, I guess, A, understand it, and B, I guess, care about this model.
I think what seems to be I don't want to say revolution, but an increased adaptation to crypto, especially in the last, couple months, last year. You have, presidents talking about crypto now. And so it's hitting a mainstream, vein right now. And it's just climbing that mainstream to the point where I know, parents that thought it was invisible, like monopoly money, are now investing in it, and now being like, hey, what were you saying about that one crypto? And so people that were true non-believers are becoming believers because it gets talked about so much more, and large financial institutions are purchasing it, and all that kind of stuff. So I think every day the average user or average car enthusiast gets more familiar with crypto. And I think when they hear about a way to invest, because you've seen the price of cars, and 15 years ago cars probably weren't the best. I mean, you pick up a DuPont registry or one of those other where they sell high value cars, and you could pick up like a GT40 for like 450 grand, which now that's a $3 million car. In 10 years, I don't know if there's very few other assets that have appreciated like that, or an LFA, or all those cars. And R34s, I mean, when I picked my R34 up, it was like, it was a great market, obviously, but it was like, 60 grand or 70 grand. And that same gray market car today is $115,000 car. And so to do that kind of stuff is in the car market. And I think it's just going to keep going up because people do love these cars. And, obviously they peaked at a point and it came back down. But even when it came down, if you would have bought that car, like my GT3 RS, I bought that in 2019, right before everything went crazy. And I mean, I'm still way up on the car, even though that the market's kind of come back down. So, I think, like you said, the rarity of these cars is just going to keep increasing, and with the increase in rarity, you're going to keep that price is going to keep increasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess what I'm hearing is, all it's going to take is time for people to start coming over and understanding this technology a little bit more, and not just equating it to ape JPEGs that don't really have any reason why they should be worth $200,000.
Yeah. I mean, it's a solid, and I get, if you're into NFTs and whatever, like I get there's only one and it's whatever, but like this is backed by a thing you can touch, right? Like it's in our garage. It's at a car show. It's a real thing that at some point can go to multiple different ways of selling. You could sell it at an auction. You could list it on social media. You could have it go to a dealer. There's a million ways to sell it. There isn't just one way to sell it. It's a tangible asset, right? It's a thing. And I think, whether that thing is gold or watches or cars, I think real estate, it's all the same principle. It's just a different vessel on where to park money and let time do its thing and grow that.
Yeah. And I think one thing people don't look at, and maybe it's just kind of a novel way to look at this asset, is I think cars are actually monetizable too, especially if they're really rare. And so one of the things we talk about is cars that we get in our collection. We will work on creating relationships with maybe movie studios and have it rented out to be featured in a movie. Maybe it's the protagonist's car or whatever, and that can generate revenue for the shareholders of that car. Or a lot of cars kind of end up becoming social media stars in and of themselves. In fact, I'm wearing an Adam LZ brand with the his Safari GTR on the back, and like we can make whole video series about a car, and that generates revenue, and you create merch around it. And so it's not like you're just waiting for the car to appreciate in value, or you're trading the speculation of the market. But as a shareholder of the car, you can be part of a community who's figuring out what are some cool things we can do with this car, and it can actually generate income for us as a group in the meantime as well.
Yeah, it's crazy what the cars themselves can do, right? I like that old F100 rat rods. It's I call her Old Smoky. I took it out just the other day because the roads weren't too icy. Still pretty sketchy in the thing, but I took it to Fleet Farm to go pick up like dog food, and a young kid pulls up next to me in the parking lot. He's like, "I've seen that truck before." He was like, "Man, where have I seen that?" He goes, "Did the muscle build that thing?" I was like, "He did." He's like, "Man, I knew I saw that on his Instagram," because he, Discovery ended up not picking it up. He offered it to Discovery. They're like, "No, this is back when the Diesel brothers were rolling on Discovery Channel," and they're like, "No, I think we're good." And then he posted it all over social media, and the thing kind of blew up on social media. It was like him and not Heavy D, the other one, Diesel Dave, were like rolling coal all over Salt Lake City, and they're doing burnouts, and it kind of blew up on social media for a week or two there, and enough to where this 19-year-old kid remembered it. And so it is kind of crazy how what aura a vehicle can take on as it goes through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, that's the vision, and I think we're tapping into something that can be really, really huge. And yeah, it's exciting to have you be part of the team as well.
Yeah, I'm excited. I appreciate you guys allowing me to come onto this journey, and I'm here for it. I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the last thing is, like, I think also the value they add to the team is you're uniquely qualified to help us identify some of these markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've been in a car collecting family. You've collected a lot of cars yourself. You pay attention to the markets. You're on Barrett-Jackson, but also to be noted, you have a pretty sizable Facebook group, Import Exotics, Buy, Sell, and Trade.
Let me pop that on screen right now.
And so you have a lot of people messaging you to list cars. You're looking at these. You're filtering what people are about to list. So you have a very unique insight on what's popular, what's not, what the feedback's getting, and kind of boots on the ground.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about how you got into that.
Yeah, so I just like to buy and sell, and whether that's through Revhard or other sort of vehicles that aren't exactly, as you can tell by my collection, by my collection you kind of tell what year or around what year I was born. I'm an early 90s, kid with my dad was way into muscle cars, and I used to watch those shows growing up, and it wasn't History. What channel? Every Saturday and Sunday morning, they'd be like wrenching on muscle cars or 4x4s, whatever, and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I got into just the love of the cars, and the guy was, there's my judge right there. I listed, but I knew the guy. Excited. I was early on this page, and I knew John, and he was interested in selling the page, and he was making more money on diesel trucks, being that he's out of Texas, than he was cars. And I had some cars I need to sell. Especially back then, when I was trying to sell, and so I took over the page, and yeah, the page has kind of morphed into a lot more exotics, and I was, I'd let something go through that was more JDM than exotic, and it kind of caught a lot of flack, and so the page is kind of about the highest end of cars listed on Facebook right now. But it there's still affordable ones. Something I've learned through that page, the cars that have currently taken the biggest hit are Lamborghini Uruses. And about 4 or 5 months ago, and I don't post them because it's cars, not SUVs and trucks, but that people try to post them all the time. And I saw the price of those go from like close to 300, maybe 325 for a high spec one. And now most of them that get they try to post on the page are around 160, 170, 180, and a really high spec one just breaks 200. So I would say in the last 4 or 5 months, those have gotten crushed, just absolutely crushed. But they're
it's
cool
basically
cars.
a Volkswagen. So
yeah, it depends how you look at it. I mean, personally, I'd rather have the Porsche Taycan or a Porsche Cayenne Turbo GT, which is the same thing, but a Porsche version over the Urus. But
there's some JDM.
Yeah, there's still any JDM that I get, I throw up there. That's GTR, even some GTTs or GT25s. If it's a super clean Evo, I'll post that. And then obviously any, as the title would tell you, any GTR, any Supra, any Supra of any year. RX-7s I originally was posting, but they seem to take a lot of heat. So I kind of stopped.
For an FD?
It wasn't in the title, and I guess people didn't enjoy the cars being let through that weren't, because it's GTR, or it was when I first took over, it was like GTR, Supra, NSX exotic or whatever. And I changed it to be more inclusive. But FDs just, they seem to take a hit. And, but yeah, so it's mainly GTR Supras and exotics with some Evos really clean Evos I let in that seem to do just fine. So
yeah, it's strange because the price of FDRX7s just continue to rise. So
yeah, I love it. If I fit in them, I would own one, but I'm a little too big for that car. But the other ones that the people try to post a lot of BMWs on the page, and for a long time I let M3s, M4s in, and they tended to. Everyone would comment within the first 30 seconds. This isn't an exotic. This isn't an exotic. I'm like, all right. I mean, it's an $80,000 car, and it's from Germany. It seems pretty exotic, but.
What do you think the hottest car is right now?
The ones that seem to do the lamp, I think Huracans and so I think they're just like if you've gotten a little money and you want to be a little flashy, the Huracan is just what everybody seems to want to buy. But I mean everything. Everybody has their strokes, you know what I mean? It just depends on the buyer. And, I think, 34s are, I think right now it's hard to price a 34 because people still, as a seller, you want that 2001, 2002, 225, right? And it's just buyers now are like, nah, I want 125, 150. And so it's right now, I think that's the hardest car to price and know what I think that's the biggest discrepancy between a buyer and a seller right now is a 34.
Yeah. This one right here says it's selling for $245,000.
Yeah. That's a special color, but like the 34's got interesting because you have anything from a base model to like what Connor has, V-Spec 2 NER, you have the M-Spec 2 NER. And so the spec cars and the rare cars like Millennium Jades are starting to go crazy bananas. And then base models have kind of tapped out and are on a kind of buy in the dip mode, if you will. And, a lot of people are associating their base model GTR with a spec car. So there's just a wide variety within that market. And that's kind of what we're seeing is, it's going to kind of mellow out.
Even like just a plain V-Spec, which, comes with a little bit more than a base model. And I think probably the V-Spec is what is the biggest discrepancy because the owner wants a V-Spec 2 NER price or a Millennium Jade price, but it's just it's barely above base model. And base models when they first became legal, obviously were hugely priced, and they're coming down to match, kind of demand. But I would say, like you said, but but people obviously you're going to catch a lot of flack from people that don't really understand the differences and how rare like a Millennium Jade V-Spec 2 is. And they're going to be like, oh, R34s aren't worth that. We're like, well, this is one of 300, it's like, it's a little different than a base model, whatever, white or black, whatever they made the most of, so.
And then kind of the last question I have is, what do you have your eyes on personally next? I know that you're always rotating cars. Is there anything that you're scoping out currently?
I don't really know. Like I said, I got to sell a couple. I got to get a fun off-roader for the winter around here. Like right before I got on, I was bidding on an H1 at Barrett. That was sweet, and I have a little regret on not purchasing. Now that the more I let it marinate, I probably should have bid a little bit more. Kind of eating me up a little bit now, but so I'm looking for some, an early '90s Land Cruiser that's been redone, an H1, something like that I can, that's cool that I can drive in the winter and not feel bad about it. But yeah, once I sell a couple, I've always wanted and I don't know if I'll ever pull the trigger on one, but I've always loved the ACR Vipers. And a white with blue stripe. ACR would be, you know, and I can't remember what they called it. It wasn't a heritage edition, but it was like their final edition. It was white and blue, and it's like it has all the canards on it. It has like, it is so cool, and I've always wanted one. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I'll ever pull the trigger on one, but whenever I see one, I'm going to consider buying it.
Yeah,
So,
that would be a sweet car to have in your collection, man.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, it kind of goes with the Nismo and the GT3 RS. It's that like 2000 and, you know, in like 2015 or whatever is really when I felt like they started making those real track cars for the road, whether it was a GT350R, an ACR Viper, the GT3 RS, the you know, what else, whatever the 488 was at the time. They had like I think they had, no, maybe Pista, but whatever it was, like all these manufacturers started coming out with these. You had the ZR1 Corvette was like huge wing, super track focused. The C7 one was, and so yeah, like any one of those, like me just being a track car, I love those. And then I feel like to bring the Porsche collection a white 930 turbo, just a good old Widowmaker would look cool. Would look cool in the collection too. So we'll see how it goes, but got to sell a couple first before I buy next. But
so I got a question with your, you know, view of what's going on in the collector market. You know, earlier we were talking about, I think we had touched on like old Porsches, like let's say 10 years ago, you could get an air-cooled Porsche for like 911 for $10,000, you know, maybe $15,000. And now you can't find them for under 50. You know,
no, they've gone crazy.
Yeah. What do you think is the car right now that somebody who wants to buy a car for investment, like what is the air-cooled 911 right now?
I honestly, I don't have a good response to that because I feel like every car is just like you used to be do the same thing. I love, you know, one of the 4x4s was a Ford Expedition with the 7.3 liter.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, you could find a mint beautiful one of those for like 10 grand, 10, 15 grand. And like, I'd see them all over the place and people like couldn't get rid of them. Now it's a $50,000 truck. You're like, what is going on? Yeah, dude, to find a real minty diesel that's in good shape is like 40 to 50 grand. It's insane. And like people couldn't give those away.
Yeah, we used to get them at the dealership as trades, and then we would sell them for 10, and I'm like, wow, that's a lot. And then you're saying 50? That's insane.
Yeah, it's and I think like I don't know of a car right now, you know, and like I like to race in lemons, and there is no $500 car that works. You used to be able to get your first car for $500 when you're in high school mowing lawns, and it's just, you know, whatever you want to blame it on, just the overall market, or whatnot. You know, I think one that's climbing and I've watched climb is gate or 6-speed R8s, even V8s, or the V10s have used to pick up for like 60 and now they're back up to like 110, 120. The V8s I've seen start to climb, the V8 6-speeds. Anything manual, I think if you can find a relatively cheap manual car, they're just going to keep going. Even modern, whether it's, you know, Mustangs, BRZs, anything manual, I think they just keep making less and less manuals. You know, I'm not a electric car guy, so I'm proud to see the ICE engines coming back and people not doing the electric stuff. You know, so I would have, about 6 months ago, I would have said anything that's the more cylinders, the better the investment. But yeah, so I you know, I don't have a good answer to that question right now, just because I think the whole market is up a lot. You're not stealing cars like you used to.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Josh, do you have any thoughts on that? I'd be curious if you come up with any.
I mean, in the JDM space, there's always the about to be legal cars that typically see a 20-30% appreciation. Now that the 99s are legal, like what Connor was saying, there are some 01, 02 rare editions of like the NER 34 that I think still have a little bit of room, but they're still pretty priced high because a lot of people have gotten savvy and buying and storing them. On the lower end, you have like the rare, the oddball stuff, like an Evo 7 is still yet to come out. A lot of the German stuff started getting cool in the 0304, so like an S4 Avant or S3, like the S series cars. There's a few cars that are about to be legal that I think will still have some appreciation, but we are kind of in that place where a lot of people have gotten priced out. When I first started Revhard, R32 was 20 grand. I would have kids show up in their STI and want to trade and have it as a daily, and I had to educate them that that's not a good decision at all. And so now the average clean R32, you can find a good deal like 35, 40 for a driver car, but they're like 50, 60 grand now. And I think, it's a lot, I guess, more reasoning why we're doing what we're doing is the average person has been getting priced out of these cars. Oh, yeah. And so I think the real play here and what you're talking about and buying low and selling high is going to be just grabbing a piece of a car. And I think that's going to be the move. We end up somehow with a Castrol R32 Group A car in our collection, or, something that has some real use to it. Those cars are just going to continue to appreciate. So I think, in the theme of what we're doing, I think the buy low, sell high play right now is the fractional ownership of these vehicles, honestly.
I will say, though, if somebody in the audience is looking for like a daily, the Toyota Century, bang for buck, oh my God, is that a great car? Like, I dailied mine for the last year when I was in Jersey and New Orleans. The amount of attention it gets is bonkers. And it is, it has every creature. I mean, mine's a 97 or a 98, and it has heated seats that work still. Because it's a Toyota, things going to run forever and everything works great.
The seats have air suspension. They bounce.
Yeah, the seats bounce. It's super comfortable. Everything you touch is high quality. It's obviously still buttons now, but and no one in Japan wants them because there's such an exclusive club over there. Kind of a poser. So they get sent over here super cheap, and you're getting for like 15, 20 grand. You're getting easily a 40, 50, $60,000 car. Granted, it's right hand drive, so you gotta one that's cool, but getting your drive through and paying for parking and parking garages is a little annoying. But other than that, I mean, it is a fantastic daily fun attention grabbing car. It blew my mind how much attention it got and how awesome it was to daily drive.
I do second that. It is a phenomenal platform to drive and own. I would caution a lot of people, though, that car is hard to find parts for in Japan.
Yeah,
and so once you bring one here, there's a little bit of maintenance with it, but as far as a driving experience, there's nothing better. And I think it's phenomenal that you've had that experience and have the wherewithal to style it with some work wheels and make it look cool. And I think everything that you touch kind of has that really cool flair to it. Ever since I've met you, and I got to see that Resto Mod Mustang with the big, I think, had 20-inch wheels on it when you were done, and some nice brakes and upgrades. The 34 race car you have, I'm really excited to see what you do with the NER when that comes in. I remember when you bought a G-Wagon, and before you even saw it, it had to get upgraded with a supercharger and some things. And so I think you bring a neat perspective to this. It's refreshing to hear from someone who's not balls deep into crypto and sees the value. I think you articulated that very well about our platform and where that's headed. And I think you provide a unique perspective to help guide us on, which cars to bring into the future here. And so, we really thank you for being a part of the team. I hope everyone got some lessons from this and some insight about what we're doing outside of the normal stuff we're talking about. So I really enjoy that. Alex, is there anything that I'm leaving on the table?
No, man, I think we pretty much covered it. It was great chatting with you and kind of hearing your perspective on these things. And I guess one thing to add to what Josh was talking about, I didn't realize that you were so into retro mod cars. And I think that really is kind of going to be a wave of the future, that people love their, their 90s sports cars, but they don't quite stack up to the creature comforts of modern cars. And that's something that we're looking at doing with our next series of cars that we're going to be releasing, that we're currently calling our Type S cars, that are going to be brought in and then like retro modded to the driven spec and then resold. So it'll be fun to have you involved in that process to help pick out which cars we bring in, what we do with them, and really turning those into something special that can then go out and find new owners.
Yeah, one of my other business ventures in automotive, it's what we do with GTRs, and it's I found I wanted to get into that business because I was one of them, man. Like, I played Need for Speed, Gran Turismo. The GTR was like pinnacle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it when I got it, it's a 90s Japanese car, right? Like, it's badass. It can be something, right? But it takes a little work sometimes. And to have that, like, in my mind, put it next to a Porsche or next to a Lamborghini or Ferrari, like, you line it up next to one of those, in my mind, it's the same deal. But at the end of the day, it's still, and it needs a little love, a little bit of, a restoration to bring it up to that modern comfort. And it's the same way, whether it's a GTO Judge or Camaro. Like, when I get in that car, like, I want to be able to drive it. I don't want to smell like fuel when when my wife and I go to dinner. Like, I don't want my wife to be complaining about the car, right? Like, I want to get in, and when I walk up to it, I'm like, man, that's a 69 GTO Judge, right? But after 5 minutes of driving, my wife's on, doing whatever she does, like, and forgets what we're in, because it drives like a modern sports car does. And same thing with the GTR. Like, her and I used to take that black 34. I took it to dinner every time we went out to dinner, because I loved it so much. And, like, we'd get in it, and it was a little loud at first, but then once we were cruising, like, my wife, it felt like we were in, and I had modified it and made it more modern. And by the time, we were on our way to dinner, it felt like you're in a modern car with we had our music playing, and the heat and AC worked, and everything was great and didn't stink. And it was good to go. And you get the cold start. And if I wanted to rev it, or, a Mustang pulled up next to me or whatever, I could get after it. But, 99% of the time it's just cruising. And, these cars, that to feel like that, to not feel like a Conobot, they do need a little bit of love. And it's my favorite thing to do. I love restorations and resto modding cars, whether it's JDM cars, Porsches, muscle cars, trucks, whatever it is. I mean, it drives my dad nuts, because even, like, I have an F450 that I can't not touch something. Like, it's got to change a little bit to make it mine. And
I get a daily for my daily.
Yeah, exactly. I keep stacking what I would call a daily driver. So, yeah. And that's, I'm not one, we have a buddy, Dan Kim, that always kills him, because I put all these miles on all my cars, and he likes to collect and open his garage door, look at and don't get me wrong, his cars are pristine, but he likes to look at them and close the door. Like, it would kill him to come into the shop, because my Sentry could use some, the work wheels could use some chrome work. My Judge is a little dusty. I'm not going to get into the drift car. The Porsches and the Nismo are Dan Kim spec right now, but there's a couple others, just because I've cleaned them before I put them away for the winter. But, like, I'm a driver, man, and for an old a 90s Japanese car, to be what I want it to be, it takes a little bit of love, and I think that's a fun thing to do for the future, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of touch on the reason why we named Driven what it is, because we're motivated, we're driven to get cars that are meant to be driven.
Yeah, for sure. That's the only way to do it. I'm not a garage queen guy. And like I said, as soon as they become garage queens, I tend to sell them. So that's not my thing.
And I think that's perfectly encapsulating what we've all talked about today. So, like, again, it was really great to have you on the podcast, and, introduce you to the rest of the world with the team that you're involved with. And, you have a pretty unique experience. And there's a lot of people out there that aren't, able to necessarily enjoy that same experience. And so I think the Driven platform also gives everyone a ride along. We can all feel like we have Connor McGovern's collection. We're all going to have a nice space to go enjoy these vehicles. And we'll have events and things where token holders can go drive them. And so that's what we're excited about most to bring to you guys is what you've seen today and what you've heard today, we can all have a part of. And that's what we're looking to do with the Driven vehicle. So stay tuned. Again, our app is going to be dropping soon. We have the Discord server, which is the next evolution of the Facebook group from the V Bulletin board. That'll be active and engaging, and Connor will get you in there to fish around and kind of give your perspective on. But that's what we're doing. We're evolving the car community on chain. We're providing the resources, providing the experience that we all love, and especially as the prices increase and get priced out, real world assets are all going to be tokenized. So jump on board, come check us out. Alex, we got X at
Driven Labo, DRVN Labo. You can follow me on X at Rext_Racer, and Josh is at Max_Gains_Driven. And I don't know if you're really on X much yourself, Connor. I know I did.
No, I do. It is not active. My previous employment, being the NFL, because I'm retiring after this season, people weren't very nice on Twitter. So instead of taking that taking that negativity in, I X'd that negativity out of my life. And but now that I don't think I'll be critiqued on my daily activities and job now via X, I'll have to get back on it. So
cool. Yeah, and check out his group, the Import and Exotics Buy Sell Trade GTR NSX Super Lambo Ferrari Porsche page. It's a very hopping community over there. You can always catch us at drivenlabo.xyz. That's going to be our main hub. You can get to all the other offshoots from there, the Driven vehicles, the Driven culture. You can check out the Base Buster coin. So thanks everybody for coming along for the ride. Connor, huge thank you for being our guest today. And we have more guests lined up here in the future. So Alex, take us out.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I guess that's going to do it for today. Again, thanks for joining us, Connor, and everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Who's been tuning in. And we will catch you next week on the next edition of the Money Shift podcast.
Money Shift, baby.
All
Thanks,
right,
Connor.
guys.
We'll see you guys.
Appreciate it. Peace.